walked into the Southern District of New York like he owned the pavement, a 25-year-old mistress on his arm and a multi-billion-dollar IPO in his pocket. Titus Sterling thought today was just a formality, a quick signature to erase his wife of 30 years, Catherine, so he could become the richest bachelor in Manhattan. He had the best lawyers money could buy. She had a public defender and a handbag from 1998. But what happened in courtroom 4B wasn't a divorce. It was an execution. And when the judge read the final verdict, the smile didn't just leave Titus's face, it left his soul. This is the story of the Sterling Empire and the silent woman who owned it all along. The paparazzi flashbulbs were popping so fast they looked like strobe lights in a cheap nightclub. It was 8:45 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, and the steps of the Daniel Patrick Moynihan United States Courthouse were buzzing with an energy usually reserved for mafia trials or celebrity scandals, but this was both. Titus Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Kerr Logistics, a company that practically monopolized the shipping routes between the East Coast and Europe, stepped out of a black Maybach. He adjusted his bespoke Italian suit, the fabric shimmering slightly under the morning sun. He was 55, but looked 40, thanks to a strict regimen of kale smoothies, personal trainers, and very expensive plastic surgery in Zurich. Clinging to his arm was Jessica Jessie Monroe. She was 24, a former Instagram fitness influencer, who was now head of brand strategy at Sterling Kerr, despite having never finished her associate's degree. She wore a white pencil skirt that was perhaps 2 inches too short for federal court and oversized sunglasses that screamed, "I am famous by association." Titus, is it true Catherine is asking for half?" a reporter from the Post shouted. Titus stopped, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "My wife is a confused woman," he said, his voice a practiced baritone. "We are offering her a very generous settlement, enough to keep her in knitting supplies for the rest of her life. But half. You don't get half of the empire when you didn't lay a single brick." Jessie giggled, hiding her mouth behind a manicured hand. "She's just bitter, guys. It's sad, really." They swept up the stairs, flanked by Titus's legal team. Leading the phalanx was Bradford Worthington, a man whose hourly rate could feed a family of 4 for a year. Worthington was known as the Vulture of Wall Street. He didn't just win divorces. He obliterated the opposition until they were grateful for the scraps. Inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was markedly different. It was silent, smelling of floor wax and old mahogany. Sitting at the defendant's table, looking entirely out of place, was Catherine Sterling. She didn't look like the wife of a billionaire. She wore a charcoal grey suit that was clearly purchased off the rack at a department store a decade ago. Her hair, a mix of steel grey and faded brown, was pulled back in a severe, sensible bun. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hands resting on the table were rough, the hands of someone who gardened, who scrubbed, who worked. Next to her sat Agatha Pren. If Worthington was a shark, Agatha was a tortoise. She was 68, wearing a cardigan that had seen better days, and she was currently rummaging through a canvas tote bag filled with loose papers. When Titus entered, he didn't even look at Catherine. He slammed his leather briefcase onto the plaintiff's table. Jessie took a seat in the gallery, directly behind him, crossing her legs and checking her phone. "All rise," the bailiff boomed. Judge Frederick Halloway entered. Halloway was a man of zero nonsense. He had presided over the Enron fallout cases and had a reputation for despising arrogance. He peered over his spectacles, looking from Titus's gleaming cufflinks to Catherine's scuffed shoes. Case number 4492B. Halloway grunted. Sterling versus Sterling. Petition for dissolution of marriage and division of assets. Worthington stood up, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, we intend to make this brief. My client, Mr. Sterling, built Sterling Kerr Logistics from the ground up. He is the face, the brain, and the brawn of this operation. Mrs. Sterling has not been involved in the business operations since, well, ever. We are offering a lump sum of $2 million and the deed to their vacation cottage in Vermont. We believe this is more than equitable. Judge Halloway looked at Agatha Pren. Miss Pren, does the defense accept? Agatha stood up slowly. Her joints popped audibly. No, Your Honor, we do not. Titus let out a loud, scoffing laugh. He leaned over to Worthington and whispered loud enough for the mic to catch. She thinks she's winning the lottery today. Mr. Sterling, the judge snapped, you will maintain decorum. Apologies, Your Honor, Titus said, smirking. It's just, absurdity has a way of being funny. We are counter-suing. Agatha continued, her voice shaky but clear, for full control of the company. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the court stenographer paused. Then Titus Sterling laughed again. It was a cruel barking sound. Full control, Catherine can't even control the thermostat. This is a joke. Agatha didn't smile. She just adjusted her glasses. We shall see, Mr. Sterling. We shall see. The first day of the trial was a massacre, or at least that's how it looked to the press sitting in the back. Worthington called Titus to the stand first. This was their strategy. Shock and awe. Establish Titus as the titan of industry immediately. Mr. Sterling, Worthington paced before the jury box. Tell us about 1994, the year the company was founded. Titus leaned back, looking comfortable. It was a grind. I was working double shifts at the docks in Jersey. I saw the inefficiencies in how freight was being logged. I wrote the code for our proprietary tracking software, LogiTrack, on a rented computer in my basement. I didn't sleep for 3 years. I knocked on doors. I begged banks for loans. Catherine was at home. Did she help? Worthington asked. She made sandwiches. Titus shrugged. She kept the house clean. I suppose that's help. But did she write the code? No. Did she negotiate the contracts with the German shipping magnates? None. Did she secure the Series A funding from Goldman Sachs in 1999? Absolutely not. Jesse, sitting in the back, nodded vigorously, whispering to a friend, he did everything. So, Worthington concluded, would you say the success of Sterling Kerr is solely due to your efforts? 100%, Titus declared. I am Sterling Kerr. When it was Agatha Pren's turn to cross-examine, she didn't pace. She stayed behind her podium, squinting at a piece of paper. Mr. Sterling, Agatha began, you mentioned the Series A funding in 1999. Yes, 20 million. The biggest injection in the sector at the time. And you signed for that funding. Of course I did. I was the CEO. I see, Agatha mumbled. She shuffled another paper. And the original incorporation documents from 1994. The paperwork filed in Delaware. Titus rolled his eyes. What about them? It's standard boilerplate. Did you file them? My lawyer at the time did. I was busy building the product. And who was your lawyer at the time? Titus hesitated. I used a local guy. Cheap. I don't recall his name. Maybe Henderson. It was Arthur Penhaligon, Agatha corrected softly. A very expensive corporate attorney for a man working double shifts at the docks, wouldn't you say? Titus stiffened. I took out a loan to pay him. I knew I had to do it right. A loan, Agatha repeated. From whom? From a bank. Look, what does this have to do with anything I built the company? Titus's face was reddening. No further questions, Agatha said, sitting down. Titus stepped down from the stand, looking victorious but slightly annoyed. He whispered to Worthington, "Why is she asking about 1994? That's ancient history." "She's grasping at straws," Worthington assured him. "She's trying to find a procedural error to invalidate the prenup. It won't work." Next, they called Catherine to the stand. Catherine walked slowly. She looked tired. When she sat in the witness chair, she looked small. "Mrs. Sterling," Worthington began, his voice dripping with condescension. "In the last 10 years, how many board meetings have you attended?" "None," Catherine said softly. "How many hiring decisions have you made?" "None." "Do you even know the current stock price of Sterling Kerr?" Catherine looked down at her hands. "No." Worthington turned to the judge, spreading his arms wide. "Your Honor, this is a clear case. We have a passive spouse who contributed nothing to the business enterprise, now seeking to extract value she did not create. It is a cash grab, pure and simple." The judge looked at Catherine. "Mrs. Sterling, do you have anything to say to that?" Catherine looked up. Her eyes, usually grey and dull, suddenly had a spark in them, a hard, cold spark. "I trusted Titus," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I trusted him to be the face, because he loved the lights, he loved the applause, and I just wanted the work to be done." "The work you didn't do," Jesse shouted from the gallery. "Order!" Judge Halloway banged his gavel. "One more outburst from the gallery, and you will be removed." Agatha Prenn stood up. "Your Honor, the defense calls our first witness, Mr. Arthur Penhaligon." The color drained from Titus's face. "Objection!" Worthington shouted. "Mr. Penhaligon is retired. He's in a nursing home in Arizona." "This is irrelevant." The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. An elderly man in a wheelchair was pushed in by a nurse. He was frail oxygen tubes in his nose, but his eyes were sharp. "I'm not in Arizona, son," the old man rasped, "and I'm not dead yet." The courtroom was stunned. Arthur Penhaligon was a legend in corporate law, a man who had structured the mergers of giants in the 80s. The idea that he had represented a dock worker in 1994 was ludicrous. Agatha approached the witness. "Mr. Penhaligon, thank you for coming. Can you tell the court your relationship to the Sterling family?" "I was Catherine's father's attorney." Penhaligon wheezed. "Her father was Thomas Kerr." Titus Sterling shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He started chugging water. "Thomas Kerr," Agatha repeated. "The Kerr in Sterling Kerr Logistics." "That's right," Penhaligon said. "Old Tom owned a small trucking fleet. Nothing massive, but he owned the land the depot stood on in New Jersey. Prime real estate. And when Thomas Kerr died in 1993, who inherited that land? Catherine did," Penhaligon said. "She was his only child." Agatha turned to face Titus. "So the garage Titus built the company in was actually a 50,000 square foot logistics depot inherited by his wife. It was a dump," Titus blurted out. "It was falling apart. I fixed it up." "Mr. Sterling, you are not on the stand," the judge warned. Agatha continued. "Mr. Penhaligon, let's talk about the incorporation. Who paid your fees to incorporate the company in 1994? Catherine did, Penhaligon said. She wrote the check from her inheritance. And the intellectual property, the famous Logi track code. Penhaligon chuckled a dry, rattling sound. Titus didn't write that code. He doesn't know Java from a coffee bean. Catherine wrote it. She has a degree in mathematics from MIT, class of 1988. Jessie in the back row gasped. She frantically Googled on her phone. "Objection!" Worthington screamed. "This is hearsay. Where is the proof?" "The proof," Agatha said, reaching into her tote bag, "is in the original patent filing." She pulled out a yellow document encased in plastic. She walked it to the judge. "Exhibit A, Your Honor. Patent number 5590J. Method for asynchronous freight tracking. Filed June 1994. Inventor Catherine Kerr Sterling." Judge Halloway examined the document. He looked at Titus. "Mr. Sterling, you testified under oath 10 minutes ago that you wrote this code in your basement." I directed her," Titus stammered. "I gave her the ideas. She just typed it up. She was a secretary with an MIT degree who owned the land, the building, and the funding," Agatha asked dryly. "It doesn't matter," Titus shouted, standing up. "I ran the company. For 30 years I made the deals. I am the CEO. The shares are in my name." Agatha smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all day. It was a terrifying smile. "Are they, Titus? Are they really?" She turned back to Penhaligon. "Mr. Penhaligon, tell the court about the Sterling family trust." Titus froze. He looked at Worthington. Worthington looked confused. "What trust?" the lawyer whispered. "When we incorporated," Penhaligon explained, "Catherine was pregnant. She wanted to protect the assets. So we set up a dual-class share structure. Titus got Class B shares, voting rights on daily operations, the face of the company shares." "And the Class A shares?" Agatha asked. "The ownership shares. The ones that control the board, the equity, and the ultimate veto power. They were placed in the Catherine Sterling Revocable Trust," Penhaligon said. "Titus doesn't own the company. He's an employee. He's always been an employee. He serves at the pleasure of the trustee." "And who is the trustee?" "Catherine Sterling." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb, having just gone off, with the shock wave still traveling. Titus dropped back into his chair. His face was grey. Jessie Monroe stood up. "Wait, does this mean he's not a billionaire?" Agatha turned to the young mistress. "It means, Ms. Monroe, that unless Catherine signs his paycheck, Titus doesn't even have enough money to buy you an Uber home." The courtroom dissolved into chaos. Reporters were shouting into their phones, trying to be the first to break the news that Titus Sterling, the wolf of logistics, was actually just a sheep in a wolf's bespoke suit. "Order, order in this court," Judge Halloway banged his gavel so hard a piece of wood chipped off the block. "Mr. Sterling, sit down immediately, or I will hold you in contempt." Titus collapsed into his chair, his face a mask of sweaty panic.